Glad to welcome all of you to this edition of Greg Byrne Live. I'm Roger Hoover of the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Now pleased to be joined by the Director of Athletics for the University of Alabama, Greg Byrne. And Greg, roll tide. It's great to see you. It's been a little bit since we had our last monthly conversation, but how have the last few weeks been for you and Alabama athletics?
Well, it's obviously our competition season ended this past week at the NCAA Track and Field Championship. The men finished 11th in the country. The women finished 15th. We were real proud of Mercy for winning the national championship in the 10,000 meters. I was actually out there for the race, and really was cool to just see that all the hard work that she had put in over the years to put her in that position. So, but things are going good. We had SEC meetings down in Destin. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about in our industry right now, and it's just a very interesting time, to say the least. And so we've been keeping busy. Back to competition. With track, we had 26 All-Americans on, so that was quite an accomplishment. And we just finished up the academic year as well, and we had 16 of our teams that are 3.0 or higher. So we were real pleased with all the efforts and success in the classroom too.
So much of our conversations before have really focused on COVID-19 and the impact of that on Alabama athletics and just college athletics in general. And even though the pandemic is still raging on in different forms, how nice was it to go through a year where there weren't too many interruptions? We did see some here and there around Alabama athletics, but so much of it was able to get back to normal or pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, obviously, our whole approach the entire time was we were going to respect the virus, we were going to respect one another, and we were going to do everything we could to move forward safely. And I think for the last 2+ years, I think we've done a good job of it. And obviously, the pandemic has been real. It's had a lot of impact on a lot of people and families, which you hate to see. But it was obviously very nice to be able to get through a year with less disruptions as the vaccination rates continue to improve. And, reality, you talk to our doctors, who we've tried to listen to the entire time. It is probably here to stay. It's part of our society now. And, and obviously the more time that goes on, the better science and information we'll have behind it. But we knew the entire time, Roger, locking down when we didn't know what was going on, understandable. But at the same time, too, when you're dealing with our student athletes and 18 to 22-year-olds, it was something where we were having a lot of mental health issues that really escalated during the lockdowns. And we had to try to find the right balance. Now, that's what we have done. And with that said, it's important for people to have the opportunity to come together and find ways to celebrate together. And we're very fortunate that our sporting events have been a big part of that for our fans and our state. And it's felt really good to be able to do that again.
It really has. And if you look back, the last time we spoke, we wrapped up the basketball season talking about men's and women's basketball. Right now, baseball and softball are kind of in the rear view mirror, but we're seeing just how competitive the SEC has been in both of those sports. Obviously, with softball and then baseball, Crimson Tide had a winning record against 4 teams from the SEC. They're now moving on to the College World Series in Omaha. Does that just speak to how competitive the SEC is in those two sports and how well Alabama played in both sports?
Yeah, obviously, when you talk about the SEC across the board, we've continued to rise to our level of competition, which says so much about what the SEC represents. SEC West, especially in baseball, it's a challenge, and we saw that with all the teams that have made it to Omaha. We finished out the year winning 2 or 3 at home against Arkansas, which was a shot in the arm, got us into Hoover, and we made the double elimination round there. Obviously, when you talk to Coach Bohannon, it's not how we wanted it to end. We want to get back to NCAAs like we did the year before, and hopefully get in a position to host. And then, you host, you got a great chance to get to Omaha. So we've made a tremendous amount of progress, and I'm very pleased with a lot of the progress that we've made. But we still know that the bar is higher of what we expect for our program. And Coach Bohannon and his staff and the team are working at it every single day to continue to get better. And we're doing all we can to make sure we're supporting them through that process too. And obviously the bar is at an all-time high with our softball program. And it was a challenging end of the season, but just great group of young women on the team. The job that Coach Murphy continues to do is just off the charts, and we're proud of just the energy and enthusiasm he brings every single year to our softball program. And I know that we'll be back hosting regionals and super regionals and getting back to Oklahoma City in the very near future for that too.
Two programs at Alabama that have a winning tradition. Same could be said for Alabama Gymnastics. And since we last spoke, we've seen the transition bringing in Ashley Johnston as the new head coach of Alabama Gymnastics. Just what can you tell us about the transition and what you saw in her that made her the right fit for this program?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank Dana for all of her years of effort and leadership for our program. And when we knew we were going to be out looking for a coach, I had never met Ashley before. She was on my radar screen early on, as were some other people. The more we dug in and kind of talked throughout the gymnastics world to some folks, and then when we got a chance to talk to her right away, I've been fortunate. I guess fortunate to go through a lot of different interviews over the years. And, there's some when you sit down and talk to somebody within 5 or 10 minutes, you're like, oh boy, I really like this person. And Ashley was that, the job that she did coaching at Auburn, she deserves a lot of credit, but just her perspective on gymnastics, the entirety of the program, it's obviously the competition part is extremely important, and we want to compete at the highest levels. But there's also many other aspects that you have to do as a head coach and manage for your program. And she had, I just think, a great grasp of the gymnastics world and what it's going to take to get us to where we're one of those Final Four teams and competing for national championships on a regular basis, which we have obviously with our great history, and we want that to continue in the future. So thrilled to welcome her to town, and I know she's already out working and been talking to actually talked to somebody today that she may be bringing on her staff. So I know she's getting after it every single day right now.
That certainly sounds good. And that was a notable addition to the Crimson Tide, bringing in Ashley Johnston as the head coach. We did have somebody as part of your executive staff that left Alabama also in the time we last spoke, and that's Jeff Purinton, who did such a great job in a variety of roles for Alabama athletics, but most recently the executive deputy director of athletics for Alabama. Now he's the director of athletics for Arkansas State. I know you're extremely proud of Jeff and what he can do coming up in Jonesboro, Arkansas.
Yeah, very excited for he and his family. Julie and Jillian and Josie have all become friends of Regina and mine. And, early on when I got here, I had never met Jeff before. But as soon as I got a chance to get in front of him, I talked to some other people. Actually, one of the first people that reached out to me about Jeff was Reese Davis. I like to tell the story. I said, man, you started out pretty strong for your first endorsement of you when I took the job here. But obviously, Coach Saban hired him as his media relations guy when Coach first got to town, and he did a great job managing that side of our department for us, which is obviously a really important role. And then right before I came to town, Coach Battle actually brought him over from an administrative role and had him doing a lot of our external units of our department. And the more I was around him early on when I got here, I was like, this is a guy I can trust. I know he's going to work hard. And one of the things I like to say to our executive team is I'll say, don't tell me what I want to hear, tell me what I need to know. I think that's important as a leader to be able to have open communication, for you to have constructive feedback from people around you that are with you every single day. And I'll tell you, he was always really good about giving me that type of feedback, telling me things I needed to know as the AD. And I think that's a real art and a real value. And we're going to miss him a lot internally within our department. And I know a lot of people around Alabama really enjoyed getting to know Jeff and his family. And they're going to do great things over at Arkansas State.
Well, it's certainly exciting for him as he continues taking his next steps. And, of course, you leading this Alabama athletics program, getting to meet with a variety of athletic directors from all across the SEC at the spring meetings. First of all, how nice was it to be back in Destin after a couple years of not having the meetings? What do you feel like we learned about SEC athletics moving forward from the meetings a couple weeks ago?
Well, we've got really good leadership with Greg Sankey, and the presidents and chancellors in our league are very united and working collectively together to do what's best for obviously everybody's institution, but balancing that with what's right for the SEC, what's right for college sports as a whole. It was good to be back in Destin, although to be honest, when we're there, we're in the conference room the whole time. It's family's going to go out and hang out by the pool. So when our kids were still living at home, they always had a big time with that. But it was Regina and I, and the Sandestin Hilton conference rooms may be if you're ever hot, just go in there because you can hang meat in there. It is freezing, and but it was great to get back together. A lot of interesting things to talk about. Obviously, football scheduling was one that had a lot of a discussion. I think there was a thought going in that we probably would resolve whether we play 8 or 9 games in football. But the thing we learned through COVID is that don't make decisions necessarily in a rush. Make them at the right appropriate time. And we did that during COVID and allowed us to compete and play across the board, which was really important for us. I think the same thing is we just take a look at what our different options are from a scheduling standpoint. Obviously, we have been very vocal about trying to have more good games on our schedule, more SEC games. We went out and scheduled games against a lot of opponents in the future. We start with Texas this year. We've got Ohio State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Wisconsin, a lot of really good ones coming up down the road here. And we did that when we were planning on playing 8 games to get us to 10 Power Fives. Now, what does the college football playoff look like going forward? And we're going to make the best decision that we can for Alabama and the best decision for the SEC. I can tell you there's a lot of support for 9 games in the room. I think we're just kind of working through what that looks like and what the right decision is for the long-term health of the SEC and college football as a whole. And I know we'll find a good landing spot here, whether it's this summer or early in the fall.
Well, we have a lot of great games coming up at Bryant-Denny Stadium coming up this season, starting with the opener against Utah State. And kind of with that in mind, as we are a couple of months away from the football season, anything different about the fan experience that could be on the horizon at Bryant-Denny Stadium?
Well, first of all, we're starting at home and not in Atlanta or Dallas or Florida or something along those lines. So, and we're playing Utah State, which will be a night game, and we were very excited when we got to see that. So that'll, we won't be baking in the sun that afternoon. The next week we go to Texas, obviously, to start our home and home series with them. We're obviously working diligently with our staff on a customer experience across the board. We want all of our fans to have a first-class experience, and we've continued to do just some cosmetic improvements to the stadium that will hopefully enhance restrooms and concessions. It's not the major overhaul that we want to do down the road here, but we'll continue to do what we can to make sure our fans have a great experience, and we really appreciate how they continue to come out and support the Crimson Tide, which is so critical for them to do that for the success of our program.
So that's a lot to be excited about coming up for Alabama once we start that next school year. And one of the things we continue to monitor in college athletics, name, image, and likeness. We continue learning more about it. Just what do you continue learning more about it over the last few weeks, and what could be on the horizon there?
Yeah, well, it's reality. It's here to stay. We have to deal with it. I know there's a collective called High Tide Traditions that some Alabama folks have started. I think that is starting to make some headway in making sure we stay competitive, and it is really important that we stay competitive in that new era of NIL that we're in. I think out there, what is first and foremost, there have been some great opportunities for our student athletes. And I think that is wonderful, good, legitimate NIL opportunities, and that should be the way it is. And we have embraced that, and we're all for it. I think what you're seeing sometimes in some of the narratives out there, it's been hard to separate fact from fiction. And I do think there are some narratives out there that aren't necessarily always true as far as what you hear, as far as what a young man or a young woman could be have an opportunity. The NCAA has said it's not supposed to be a recruiting incentive, but the reality is everything is about recruiting, and when it comes to college sports, and so it's unregulated, and it is having an impact on what takes place. And so while there's a whole lot of good, we need to make sure we protect that and do that for the long-term health of our student athletes. I think that's a good thing to have them have opportunities in the NIL space. At the same time, too, we got to make sure that we do what we can to protect broad-based programs across the board in college sports, and the great impact that has on the young men and the young women involved, on the communities, on the university, and make sure we say, hey, there's a lot of good to that too. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to protect that for the long haul.
Well, right now, as we mentioned, Alabama just saw track and field come to a close with the national championships out in Oregon this past weekend, and now we're getting ready for this next school year and athletic year. Just what's the focus going to be for you and your team going into these next few weeks as we get closer to the start of fall sports?
Well, hopefully we get a few weeks to kind of catch our breath. Although it's with summer school now being year round and June recruiting and things like that, it's not quite as much of an opportunity to turn the light switch off for a month or two. However, we're going to be preparing for the next academic year and competitive year, and we got a lot of teams I think are going to be in a really good position. I was able to talk to Nate Oates earlier today for a while, and he was talking about the new guys that are out on the practice court already, and I think it should be pretty darn exciting. And then all of our other sports are going to be going, and it's almost year round now. So we're working on all aspects of it. We're obviously getting, continuing to work on plans on what does the SEC look like in 2025 when Oklahoma and Texas come in, and getting scheduling ready for those things. Continue to work on the Crimson Standard and work on the new competitive arena, competition arena. Working on the new golf course plans, and so there's a lot going on, raising money for all those as well. So those conversations are ongoing. But there's a lot of exciting things taking place, and the next year will be here before we know it.
We look forward to all of it. Greg, just thank you so much for your time with us here today on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We look forward to our next conversation as we get closer and closer to the start of a new year. But thank you for joining us. Roll Tide.
Thanks, Roger. Roll Tide.
All right. Our thanks to Greg Byrne. Thanks to all of you for watching the Crimson Tide Sports Network.